Hello, today we're going to cover technology security. We're going to cover some of the basic concepts for your personal computer and using the security settings on it. Welcome to everyone online, virtual cookies. In-person attendees do get real cookies, so if you ever want to stop by in person, we'll have real cookies, and for those of you who join us online, virtual cookies. Today we're going to talk about firewalls, antivirus software, keeping your information secure, logical evaluations of software and technology you encounter, and your personal credentials on your own personal computer and on the network as well. First, we're going to talk about a firewall. Firewalls protect computers or networks of computers. They control the inbound and outbound communications. So firewall settings determine the protocols for which programs can communicate outwardly with the internet and which internet services and sites can communicate with the computer. Antivirus software is installed on a computer system. It recognizes and removes known viruses, but it has to be updated. So your firewall settings that we just talked about would interact to allow the service and the software of the antivirus to communicate out to the internet to get the latest updates. And what that does is it tells the antivirus software what to look for as a malicious piece of data on the computer. So the antivirus software only knows that based on the database of known viruses and the virus signatures. So that's why it's important to keep your virus software updated. If it's not updated, it doesn't know what to look for. It doesn't know what the new bad guys in town look like. Area where you as a user have the most control is over the security of your information. And the three main areas that you want to look at are confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So when you're considering a lot of data, especially sensitive data, you want to protect confidentiality. So you need to establish a set of protocols. Who should have access to this data? Well, it's going to depend on a lot of different things. How sensitive is the information? If it's not very sensitive, it can be open to more users on the network and even public. Then you need to ask yourself who really needs to have access to this data, and that's important for the very sensitive data. Who needs to have access to it? Your accountant needs access to the financial information, and maybe certain senior managers do, but does everyone in the entire company need access to those financial records? Would the secretary need access to those? Would every administrative assistant need access to that data? What team members actually do need to have it to perform their job functions, and limit the access to those people? Then the integrity of the information, just like the structural integrity of a building, you want to consider the integrity of your information, its original content or its original purpose, and you want to consider who should be able to modify that data, who has the authority to make those changes. If you're talking about documents about operations, well then senior managers would certainly have the authority to make those decisions about procedures within the company. And if it's HR policies that need to be updated, certainly that team should be able to have the authority to make those kinds of changes. So who would have the authority to make the changes that would go into the documentation is the first question you need to address. And then again, you want to make sure you have revision protocols in place where not only the person with the authority is making the changes, but also the decision-making process is written into those protocols, and the documentation of changes of your documents is also put in place in your protocols. Availability is how and when should access be given. The most sensitive data should only be accessible from inside the network, so on the intranet. You would need to be on a company machine. Then the lesser sensitive information could be accessed through the web portal. Other information, can be exchanged on USB drives and go in and out of the company. It depends on the different levels of security that you want to have on it. So that's one of the first things that you should address is how and when access will be given. So who has the right to access that information? And that would likely have been established earlier when addressing the confidentiality and the integrity of the data. Then also what activities are dependent on the information, and that's also important in all three of these areas. What job functions are dependent on having this information, and when are those activities taking place? Your security team obviously needs to be able to access the building security system logs remotely and at any time. If there's an alert at a facility in the wee hours of the morning, you want your security team, maybe your chief security officer, to be able to log in and to see what's going on and to gather more information on an immediate basis instead of waiting until they can get to the physical location and investigate further. So you want to consider that any job functions that would be necessary and what times and how and where those bits of data can be accessed. When you are encountering new technologies, you always want to evaluate it somewhat skeptically. A few rules: do, change, author, and learn. The do rule is to ask, what does it do? Is the description clear? Does the description of the application that you're about to install or the software that you're about to purchase, does it clearly state what this software does or does not do, and if it will, and evaluate whether or not it will suit your needs? You also want to ask, is it necessary? Do we need this? Do we have another piece of software that will work just as well or maybe even better? Have we explored all the options? You just want to be very thorough when you're investigating any sort of new technology. The second thing is, when you've decided you want to move to a new software, you want to ask yourself, what does it do to your system? How does it change? Does it affect your other security areas? Is it something that will need to update so that it will need to be established with your firewall protocols so that it can communicate out and get updates? Is it going to change how? Is it going to add into other software that you already have? There's a lot of softwares that interact with each other, and you want to know exactly how everything works with your existing system and what changes are going to take place, so that if anything breaks, you know how to fix it. The author is one of the most important things you need to look at. Where did the software come from? Is it from a reputable developer? Is it from an established company? Is it a Microsoft product? Is it an Apple product? So on and so forth. Or is it an unknown, sort of obscure developer that you don't have a lot of information about? It's sort of like if you're going to be getting prescription medications. You're probably going to go to a doctor or a hospital. You're not going to just pick those up from a guy on a street corner. You want to make sure that backing is there for when you need support and that you can trust the software. And that has a lot to do with where it comes from. And for all of these, you want to ask around. You want to learn as much about the product that you're about to employ as you can. So check reviews, ask your colleagues, ask at other companies, ask at your vendor companies, ask at your competitors' companies, ask your former colleagues, ask your friends on Facebook, ask around. A lot of people are using a lot of the same software, and there's a lot of good information out there from people who are actually putting it into practice, and they're going to know not just what the label says, but they're going to know what they've experienced when they went through implementation and how it affected their other systems. Software companies can give you a lot of information, but they haven't encountered every possibility. So it's always good to check with other people who will be able to tell you what problems they encountered and how they fixed them, and save you a lot of that troubleshooting time that you might have after the fact. Okay, now we're going to address your personal security settings, your credentials. Credentials consist of your username and your password, and your username is who you are in the system. It's the name that you use to log on with. It's your screen name, your user ID, your login, etc. Usually it's assigned to you by the system. The network administrators will determine protocols for that: last name, first initial, first name, last initial, so on and so forth. So that's the name that you enter into your computer when you're logging in. And then your password, of course, is your secret code that gets you into the network. We all have passwords on our email accounts, on our credit card accounts, on our bank accounts, on any account that we have that has sensitive data in it or private information. So it ensures that no one else can interact as you on the system. And I think at this point we don't need to say, don't give your passwords to anybody else. Don't write them down on a post-it and stick them on your bulletin board. The protocols for passwords are also often set by the system. A certain number of characters, you must contain one number and one capital, so on and so forth. So some tips for creating passwords, aside from the protocols that are set, which are there to sort of help you make really good secure passwords. Some other things to consider is to use a combination of alpha and numeric and special characters if special characters are allowed by those protocols. You want to mix upper and lower case, and not necessarily the first letter as capital and the rest lowercase. Put a capital in the middle of the word, unexpected, where somebody can't just guess it. You want to use a passphrase instead of a password. So instead of saying my password is skippydoodle 796, maybe make your password MFDWS, which would be my first dog was Spot. So it's the first letter of each word in the phrase my first dog was Spot. Don't use public information. Don't use your birthday or your anniversary or something that other people would encounter about you without breaking into your sensitive data. Just publicly known information. You also want to change your password regularly. A lot of systems will establish a protocol whereby you have to change your password every 120 days. It can be a pain, but it's really there for your protection. You want to change your password regularly if you ever feel like maybe your security or your credentials have been compromised in any way. Change your password. It's the quickest, easiest way to guarantee the safety of your sensitive data. So passwords, we all have them. We all loathe them and love them at the same time. Good practice in general for any network or computer security, even for your private computers at home. Establish a set of protocols. Have a list of rules. Develop those protocols thoughtfully. Take the time to sit down and evaluate them. Share them openly with your company or your family. Follow them faithfully and review them on a regular basis in case they need to be changed or updated to meet your needs better. Finally, you can do it. Think, ask questions. We're here to help.